Good day, Kavibal, and welcome to our Facebook Live learning session. For the discussion today, the topic will be on dealing with students' online misbehavior, the what's, the why's, the how-to's. Before we begin, take note of the following reminders. Make sure you are registered to the webinar to have your e-certificate of participation. Visit certificate.vibalgroup.com to generate your proof of attendance. Place your questions in the comment box allotted during the session and they will be addressed by our speaker later on. Share the video using hashtag LearnAsOnePH as our official hashtag to our Vibal webinars. Experience learning, Kavibal! And now, to proceed with our webinar this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our distinguished speaker today. Therese Pellejo, MSc, RSci, RPM, finished as magna cum laude from Adamson University with a degree in Bachelor of Science in Psychology on March 2014 and passed the first licensure examination for psychometricians in November of the same year. She was the psychometrician of STI West Negros University for 2 years while also being a guidance counselor for the same institution for 1 year, after which she commenced her teaching career at the University of Perpetual Help in Las Piñas, teaching Indian psychology students until May of 2018. This was all done while pursuing her Master of Science in Psychology at the University of Negros Occidental Recoletos, where she graduated last April 2018. She is a TESOL certified English teacher as well and has been teaching for 7 years in a Japanese online English school called Rare Job Incorporated. She was also a psychology instructor at the University of Santo Tomas in Manila for 2 years. After taking her clinical internship, she took her second licensure examination last October 2019 and is now a registered psychologist. She has been invited as a speaker for various workshops and seminars pertaining to self-esteem and leadership for student leaders of different schools in Bacolod City and has conducted a national training seminar about emotional intelligence for team leaders of the Leway Jiao Education Group last March 2017. Recently, she was also a guest lecturer at a national webinar hosted by Bebal Group speaking about the shift to online learning and the effects this has to the mental health of both students and teachers. Last March 26, 2020. Currently, she is focusing on various online psychotherapy work and is affiliated with Vanguard Assessments, the Life app, and soon with Mind You as one of their online consultant psychologists. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ms. Therese Pellejo.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Okay, so it's my second time around here at Vival, so thank you so much for having me again. So today we're going to have the discussion about dealing with student online misbehavior. So the what's, the why's, and the how to's. Okay, so let's first discuss kung ano yung mga objectives natin for today, of course. So to be able to understand what the different online misbehaviors of students are, why they occur, and how to manage or resolve them. Okay, so to be able to acknowledge, understand, and also reassess our personal teaching approaches during this pandemic online learning situation. Kasi nga, this is our new normal, right? And to assess and recognize both the limitations and strengths of our own and our students' contribution to the quality of the online learning environment and readjust our lesson plans accordingly. Okay? So hopefully, ma-reach natin to by the end of our seminar or webinar today. Okay, so I don't need to reiterate this again, pero ayun yung na-discuss na kanina. All right, so let's begin. So, of course, our online teaching is now our new normal, as I've also discussed in the shift to online learning last time. So, I'm just going to briefly discuss what it means for us teachers and the challenges that we might be experiencing due to this shift to online learning. All right. So, what it means for us in a nutshell, because I also discussed this already in the past one. So, the advantages that we're going to have, having this new normal is the opportunity for learning new skills. So, of course, all of us are used to face-to-face teaching, diba? So, I think this is the opportunity for us to learn new skills, to upgrade our skills in terms of, using technology and doing it in a more advanced, relevant during this time matter or manner rather. So it's a call to be more creative and resourceful on how we're going to be able to get the interests of our students, right, and keep their interests while we're having our lessons. Of course, another advantage for us is it's less physically straining in a sense na hindi ka na kailangan sumigaw in an online platform, 'di ba? As we usually do in a face-to-face class talaga. And of course, less walking, so more relaxing yung nasa ano lang sa bahay lang. Multiple sources of additional references because we have a plethora of resources in the online platform, right? More time with family or more time at home, and of course, developing more resilience during this time. So, disadvantages, there are also some disadvantages for us teachers, as we all know. So, there are additional responsibilities or burdens for us. So, we have to develop new lesson plans to adjust to the digital or online learning platform because it's very different from face to face one. Adapting to the new relevant teaching strategies in terms of online teaching and being more considerate to students kasi nga it's pandemic time, adjusting the standards that we have previously set for our students. I can attest to this by myself kasi medyo mataas yung standards ko kasi for my students, I had to readjust during this pandemic. And lastly, burnout because of course, it's not just our responsibility to teach but also to care for our students kung kamusta sila, and sometimes because we're also experiencing the anxiety during this time. So sometimes it can be overwhelming. So that's also a disadvantage. Pero yun yung whole picture. I wanted to show you this video, but unfortunately, there might be some copyright problems. So nilagay ko na lang po yung title dyan. So maybe you can search it after this webinar. It's just what are the challenges that we might be experiencing with online classes. This is actually a fun video to watch, so maybe you can watch it afterwards. Yan lang po yung title, so please take note of it. So I'll be moving on to the next part. So what is first and foremost online misbehavior? So I'm going to discuss this according to the various student demographics that we're going to have because of course this is a national webinar. Ibig sabihin, we do have teachers teaching in different levels, right? So primary, secondary, and tertiary level. So for the first one, we have the elementary demographics. So ano ba yung mga common problematic behaviors na nai-encounter natin during our online classes? All right. So first and foremost, there's the lack of focus or high distractibility. Since of course our children in the elementary demographic are, have very short attention spans, easily distractible sa mga kung ano-anong mga bagay na andyan sa screen nila or even sa surroundings nila or even the sounds can easily make them lose focus in lessons, right, that we are conducting online. So non-compliance of task or homework. So hindi naman lahat ng mga pupils, of course, but some of them are not complying to some task and homeworks na binibigay kasi there's this feeling na parang real hindi real ang online classes for them. Kasi again, they're not yet at that level of maturity that na-understand nila na supposed to be ito na yung replacement for the face-to-face one. So minsan hindi sila nagko-comply. right? So they can also be uncooperative with instructions, like if the teachers are asking them to turn on their cameras para makita sila ng teachers nila, or to mute their microphones para hindi din distracting for everybody in the online platform. Minsan hindi sila nakikinig or nakakalimutan nila or something like that. So this is another problematic behavior. Absenteeism, of course, for some students, baka hindi kasi wala silang access to, the digital platform to actually have online classes, or pwede din they're demotivated kaya ayaw na lang nilang pumasok, pwede din ganun, or ang sarap kasi matulog kaya matutulog na lang sila. So there are different reasons. Okay, cyberbullying. So I actually asked one of my friends na teachers then, with the elementary and the high school demographic. And I was shocked, or nagulat din ako na may cyberbullying pa rin pala. Even in the online platform, this can also still be rampant kasi nga nag-uusap pa rin naman yung mga students. So even sa chat box, there can be some cyberbullying na nagaganap. So not as participative as compared to face. So of course, it's easier for the pupils of this demographic to engage pag may physical presence kasi we can facilitate games, activities, ganyan. So mas participative sila compared sa online. Ang hirap, tawag mo doon? Ang hirap kunin ng attention nila in an online platform, 'di ba? Compared sa face-to-face. So they're not as participative sa online platform compared sa face-to-face. Some of them also lie about the status of their connections kasi either ayaw na nilang makinig or nabore na sila kasi matagal yung lesson or something, or yung connection talaga nila parang intermittent, may magandang internet connection, may hindi maganda, and all of that stuff. So they just end up lying. So again, this is not for everyone in this demographic, but some na-encounter natin na ganito yung mga problema nila. Right? So most, hindi naman most, pero like, again, some students also show signs of being demotivated in lessons. All right. So for the secondary demographic, which is junior high school and senior high school naman, let's go there. So the same thing, but for different reasons. Okay, so yung lack of focus nila and high distractibility at this time is more of their own doing, or more or less yung mga gadgets surrounding them, or ang mga media, YouTube, or tawag dito, YouTube, or social media, or games, right? So they also have a tendency to disregard proper behavior. So majority of them minsan late na pumapasok, or even during the class they can make or say inappropriate comments during this time, right? So doing other things instead of focusing on class, like again, social media or online gaming. This is very common for this demographic. They do have this lazy or demotivated demeanor. Parang yun yung labas nila sa atin. So parang uninterested sila in engaging in class. Parang ganun yung dating. And it can also be very, tawag mo dun, discouraging for us to continue the lesson pagka ganun yung mga estudyante natin, di ba? So cheating is also very rampant in an online platform, especially online examinations, kasi nga we don't have that luxury of actually being there presently, and pwede nating mabantayan talaga sila physically. Walang ganon pagka online platform na. So they do have the tendency to cheat by having physical copies of their notes, or like maybe chatting using Facebook or something with their friends, to get the answers. So this is something na we're also struggling with, okay, sa behavior nila. It's inevitable. And teasing or bullying in the chat box, okay, and disrupting class, like drawing in interactive space or making unnecessary noise. So merong mga ibang platforms or LMS or learning management systems yung ibang schools na meron silang parang mga parang whiteboard or blackboard na parang shared for both teachers and students. They can interact in that parang whiteboard. We do have that in UST. So with one of my experience sa isang klase ko, when I turned it on, I forgot to turn it off. I really spent around 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes kasi ayaw nilang tumigil, and it really disrupted the class, right? So these are some of the difficulties that we experience for the secondary demographic. So for the tertiary demographic, which is I am most familiar with itong demographic na to. So still lack of focus, high distractibility, but for another reason, more of sa stress, more of sa mga inaalala nilang mga other things. So iba-ibang reason pero same effect sa kanila, right? They're often fatigued. Okay? So they're usually sleepy sa class. So wala masyadong nagsasalita. For college teachers, I think na notice niyo yung paminsan-minsan yung mga ibang estudyante nyo kasi nagpupuyat sila. They don't really participate anymore because they're very sleepy, they're very tired, they're very fatigued. Okay? Non-participation in discussion, as what I've said. Absenteeism, at the same time, parang it's because of their demotivation. They can tend to demean or insult teachers in class. So, of course, in the tertiary demographic, meron ng sariling pag-iisip ang mga tertiary students, right? And if they feel like yung teacher parang bullyable, or something na, I mean, I do not condone this behavior, of course, but this is something nevertheless that happens to some of our teachers, unfortunately. So they can demean or insult their teachers like this. For example, hindi marunong si ma'am gumamit ng ganitong platform, ganyan-ganyan. Parang disrespectful behavior na talaga siya. Okay, so delayed compliance to coursework for different reasons as well. So excessive requests for reconsideration. So ang difference kasi sa tertiary demographic is that ang dami nilang workload because their teachers, their professors, instructors expect them to be able to catch up na with all the workload since matatanda na sila compared sa ibang demographic. So there is disregard for proper behavior as well, such as being late again and having inappropriate comments during class. Cheating is also rampant. I've been trying my best to try to diminish this problem in my own class, but it's very difficult. And of course, they're also disrupting class, just like the secondary students. All right. So again, there was supposed to be another video for this na makaka-relate din yung mga teachers. It's a very funny video sana. But again, I cannot play it in this webinar. So please just look it up. Yan po yung title niya, yung naka-display sa screen. Please look it up in YouTube so that you can see it afterwards in our webinar. Pero yung pinapakita niya kasi dyan, yung iba-ibang very relatable na types of students that we have, especially for the secondary and tertiary level. All right. So, let's go to the why na part. So, we're done with the what. Okay? Bakit nga ba sila nagiging ganito? Bakit sila nag-misbehave like this? Right? So, there are two main reasons. The first one is individual student situations that they have. And then the second one is the structural problems to the course. So, structural problems. So let me discuss this one. So for individual student situations, so ito yung mga experiences nila in general, okay, that causes probably yung na-discuss natin kanina na misbehaviors. So for the different demographics, let's try to assess. So for example, irregular and poor connection. This is something that can be shared for both primary, secondary, and tertiary, and that can severely affect their levels of, focus. Yung mga na-discuss natin kaninang mga problems, baka nasa-stress sila, nagagalit sila, nade-demotivate na sila because of that poor connection, right? Pwede ding it's the anxiety due to the current state of the country. Usually, it's just the tertiary students who have this kind of issue majority of the time. Kasi parang yung primary, wala pa naman silang pakialam doon. Secondary, syempre, medyo may slight na pakialam pero hindi nila masyadong niruruminate, unlike the tertiary one. So we have limited access to gadgets and resources. So yung iba wala silang laptop, or kung meron man silang laptop, hindi ganun kabilis for online classes. That causes stress for all primary, secondary, tertiary. So bad habits such as sleeping late, not eating healthily, not exercising, this actually affects their mood, and of course it will affect their behavior in class as well. Family problems. This is something that we cannot control. It's inevitable at hindi natin alam kung sinong mga students natin ang may mga problema pala in their families, right? Financial problems. During this pandemic, maraming na lay off from their companies or parang waiting pa rin, hindi nila alam kung ano yung status nila. So this is actually causing problems for the students, a lot of stress, right? And it also affects their behavior, obviously, in the online platform, right? Kasi wala na silang motivation to study, right? Relationship problems. Nilagay ko dito for secondary and tertiary kasi sila yung usually may mga love life, right? So, baka nag-break up or dahil LDR or something, may mga issues na ganyan, right? And it affects their well-being. It affects how they perform in the online platform. Health problems. So maybe some of them are sick, maybe some of them had COVID or knew someone na nagka-COVID and that's causing them anxieties or something, right? So that also affects their behavior. And lastly, developmental issues. Developmental issues as in like for for the primary students or pupils rather, maybe masyado pang immature yung brain nila, hindi pa masyadong super developed, and so yung mga behaviors such as being restless or highly distractible, hindi mo sila mafo-fault doon in their own right kasi that's more of a developmental issue na parang normal kasi sa kanila talagang to have very short attention span, right? For secondary naman, nagsistart na yung ano natin, 'di ba, adolescent stage during secondary. And so maraming hormonal changes, maraming mga changes na nangyayari sa katawan and emotionally and psychologically. And that carries over to the tertiary level. And so because of these issues, that actually affects also how they react to, online classes. All right, so that's the first one, the first main reason, individual student situations that is usually out of our control. Hindi natin makokontrol yon. So for the second one, this is something that we do have a little bit of control of. So we have the structural problems to the course or the subject that we're handling. Okay, so these are generally the student experiences, and these are also the two factors, okay, under the structural issues to the course, right? So we have generational issues. Pag sinabi kong generational issues, ito yung the gap between teacher and student. So sometimes the gap between age gap between the students and the teachers is really highlighted during this time kasi of course, ang mga bata ngayon very very techy sila, sobrang bilis nila mag-multitask in terms of, digital and everything. And sometimes, that generational gap and that discrepancy in terms of skills in that area is really affecting the quality of lessons na nako-conduct, right? So medyo, for example, yung mga students pag for example si ma'am or si sir medyo matanda na at hindi masyadong techy, so parang every single time na may gagawin siya for the lesson, magtatanong siya sa mga students niya, and so that disrupts the class. That also affects their motivation to study, and so because of this generational issue, this is something that's causing a little bit problem din sa behavior nila, right? So this is more of a teacher factor. So the next one is they're bored with the lesson. So bakit ko chinek yung teacher factor and course structure? So sometimes it's because masyadong heavy yung course plan na ginawa natin or yung subject lesson plans na ginawa natin for the entire year or for the entire sem. Masyadong overload. Or hindi naman masyadong overload, sorry, masyadong ayun nga, parang jam-packed siya to the point na siguro sobrang bilis ng pagkakadiscuss natin na hindi na masyadong napoprocess ng bata. And so because of that, right, they become bored. Okay? Minsan din, it's also a teacher factor. Baka okay naman yung course plans and everything, pero si ma'am or si sir, parang hindi na lang talaga energetic in explaining this, or kasi masyadong marami na sigurong ginagawa din kasi nga 'di ba may dagdag na tayong responsibilities ngayon, siguro stressful din for the teacher, so sometimes they cannot also give their 100% sa every single lesson. And so that can also affect yung level of interest of the students. So the next one is information overload. So for information overload, again, pwedeng teacher factor kasi may ibang teachers na ang daming dinadagdag ng mga extra things on top of the course plan na plinano niya. Pwedeng ganon, right? Pwedeng sa course structure mismong sa course plan, ang dami talagang in-include na topics. And so na-overload sila, and again, that also can be demotivating sa kanila, or parang nagiging cause ng parang na nawawalan sila ng gana, right? Then we have loss of sense of structure. So sense of structure is yun yung may may mga habit na tayo, may mga routines na tayo, and of course kids, students have this as well as we do, right? So we're all affected by this, and so even the students, parang again, sabi ko, hindi man nila masyadong maramdaman na real siya, kasi nga parang pwede silang gumising, wala nang ligo-ligo, wala nang kain-kain, magkaklase na lang sila or something like that. And so parang walang sense of structure, walang parang hindi predictable yung gagawin nila. And because of that, again, that affects their behavior. So bakit chinek ko yung teacher tsaka course? Kasi teacher factor, pwede kasi tayong mag-set ng mga rules. Pwede tayong mag-set ng rules, which we're going to discuss later on, in how we're going to conduct the class, or how we expect our students to act in class. Like, do you want them to be naligo ba talaga sila, yung mga ganong bagay. So we can actually control that or request that sa students natin, 'di ba? And then para lang to give that sense of structure pa rin sa kanila. And again, sa course then maybe binago na yung mga inadjust na yung academic scheduling, ganyan ganyan, to the point na parang masyado ding wala ng structure para sa mga bata na dati nasanay silang ganito, ganito, ganyan. Ngayon, parang ganito na lang. So, medyo hindi na masyadong strict, ganon. So, no real sense of urgency. Kasi again, there is this feeling when we're doing things online na parang, especially for kids or for students, na parang wala naman si ma'am dito in front of me, or si sir. So parang hindi naman talaga nila ako mapapagalitan. Parang walang real consequence for them. So there's no real sense of urgency at that moment. At that moment, maybe afterwards mapoprocess na nila, ay, may grades pala to. Right? But like at the moment, parang walang real sense of urgency at that moment. Okay? So, pwedeng teacher factor kasi pwedeng hindi pinaparamdam ng teacher sa estudyante niya na may ganong klaseng wala nang masyadong authority, ganon. Tsaka pwede din na masyadong relaxed din yung course plan. Right? So, topics feel unrelatable or irrelevant to the students. So, if the students, studies have shown na if students can relate more with the topic, or they can apply it to their real life, mas naglo-learn sila, mas naging interested sila. And so if they feel like the topic was presented in a way na hindi sila nakaka-relate, kahit anong subject pa yan, right? They don't really feel the necessity to really prioritize it and really take it seriously. So it can be a teacher factor. It can also be the course plan itself. Right? So next one is they feel like they're only on the receiving end. So ibig sabihin, they don't feel like ang teacher nila open to listen to their opinions, or to kasi minsan hindi naman natin kasalanan yun, minsan masyadong marami tayong kailangan i-catch up. Naintindihan ko naman yun, na kailangan, okay, makinig lang kayong mga students ha, ganun na lang, and then let's just do this, let's finish the course plan and everything. And so the students might feel like wala silang autonomy to express themselves, parang ganon. So they're just like passive learners na lang. Hindi sila active learners in that sense, kasi makikinig na lang sila kasi ang dami pa nating ika-catch up na lessons. And so because of that, nadidemotivate din sila. Right? So uncertainty due to erratic academic schedule. Now ito again, this is something na minsan out of our control din. The school decides for this one na ganito na magiging plano natin today, pero baka next week iba na naman siya. Okay, so majority of the schools naman talaga are setting na talaga for the whole year or for the ganito. Pero there are unexpected changes kasi minsan, 'di ba? Depending on the situation. Right? So may mga uncertainty na ganun. And then we have not enough intellectual and independent challenges kasi again, maybe ang mga teachers, ang priority na natin is just finish what we have to finish, right? So sometimes may ganon, or may iba ding mga teachers na hindi exactly open na yung mga students nila yung magte-take up ng time para mag-process ng sarili nilang iniisip, yung mga ganon. So, may mga ganong factors, di ba? And of course, for college students, there is sometimes too much workload. And because of that, so minsan may mga teachers na sobrang maraming pagbigay ng mga requirements. May iba naman na dahil talaga sa course plan, kailangan nilang maraming requirements or activities or worksheets na ibibigay sa mga students. And that can also affect their behavior. Okay, so how do we deal with this misbehavior? So I'm going to discuss it in three parts. We have the role of motivation in their misbehavior, the age specific tips in dealing with this misbehavior, and what are the additional personal tips or pro tips that I have, not just from my experience with UST, but also my 7 years teaching in an online platform, teaching English, diba? So I will share with you some of those tips. All right. So according to Eberly Center ng Carnegie Mellon University, there are two main factors predicting classroom incivilities. Pag sinabi nating incivilities, I think majority of you know naman, but for those na hindi, it's just misbehavior. Parang social lang, pinasosyal lang siyang word. Incivility. Okay. So two main factors daw bakit nagiging incivil yung mga bata. The first one is the choice of motivators. Now, for instructors who use negative motivators such as parang ginigilt trip nila yung mga bata or pinapahiya nila or nag-i-implant sila ng sense of fear sa mga bata, they actually experience more incivilities than those teachers who actually use more positive motivators like encouragement or praise. So, in my own personal experience, I actually prefer the latter. Kaya if you ask any of my students, my approach to them, whether online or face to face, is always positive. So I usually parang very light-hearted yung approach ko in the classroom. We joke around. They can open up to me at any point, at any time, and I really do encourage them to speak up about their opinions. Kasi I really have seen the positive effects. So hindi lang pala sa akin yon, but also according to research, it is more effective in lessening the stress. So I think I've only experienced it like twice or thrice in my entire teaching career na stress out ako sa mga estudyante ko. Pero very rarely siya na nangyayari. Kasi again, right, according to this, the research of Eberly Center, right, the more positive motivators that you use, the less incivilities you're going to experience as a teacher. And so that's good news for us, diba? The second reason, the number of immediacy behaviors. Now, yung immediacy behaviors, yun yung verbal tsaka non-verbal cues natin, kung warm ba tayo sa kanila, approachable ba tayo, friendly tayo. So according to their study, instructors exhibiting few immediacy behaviors experience significantly more incivilities. Mas uncooperative yung mga bata, mas pasaway. Mas pasaway, mas ano matawag mo doon? Hindi ko ayun nga, hindi cooperative, wala silang interest, parang ganoon, hindi sila nagpa-participate compared to the instructors who exhibit several immediacy behaviors na nagiging warm sila, approachable sila, friendly sila sa mga students nila. So I think a lot of us here have experienced that na pag friendly tayo sa mga students natin, the more silang nagiging interested. I've had one student who told me na um, ako na lang daw yung pinapasukan niyang klase. Right? Kasi sabi niya, it's a good vibe daw pag nasa classroom. So he feels like welcome pag nandun sa klase ko. And so, ibang klase hindi na siya pumapasok. Pero sa klase ko, which is the last subject, pinapasukan niya pa rin because of that immediacy behavior. So, they mirror pala, no? And this is, surprisingly, this is for all of the demographic that we've discussed. So we have the primary, secondary, and tertiary. And I can say, even for tertiary, it works, no? This immediacy behavior, it really does work because they mirror the behavior and the approach that we use onto them. And so if detached tayo sa kanila, they will also be detached sa atin. If we seem uninterested in the subject that we're teaching and to them personally as people, they will also detach and seem uninterested to invest in the class. So kumbaga, ayun sabi mo, if you want to gain something, you have to invest something first. And so tayo as teachers, we have to do that first and foremost para they will mirror it. Okay, so this is just a sample of the picture I have with my students. So as you can see, it's very lighthearted yung approach. And so they're very willing to do, the tasks or the activities that I have them or I'm requesting them to do for our class's sake because they are really truly enjoying the class. And that's why I'm encouraging everyone to be to use more positive motivators and to really just be friendly to your well, I think personally, I just don't think may kawalan because they respect me. Walang hindi nawawala yung authority ko in the classroom. Just because you're friendly to the student doesn't mean na wala ka ng authority. It just shows them that you're a person and you're open to them. And so they would like to connect with you because of that. All right. So I'm going to discuss two theories here, mainly to discuss motivation and how does it affect misbehavior in civility. So the first one is the drive reduction theory of motivation. So according to this theory, meron daw tayong mga drives na gusto nating isatisfy, and until hindi siya nasa-satisfy, we're going to keep on doing things to try to satisfy these drives. So we have the primary drives, which are, of course, the parang sa body, mga physiological needs. And then we have the acquired or secondary drives na nalalearn natin by conditioning, such as social approval, acceptance, money, ganyan. And homeostasis is, of course, the state wherein you're satisfied na. So, ang pinaka cycle niya is that if there is a lack of homeostasis, it means there is a need that needs to be fulfilled or satisfied. And because there's this need, you will have either of the two drives. And then because of that, it's going to be your motivation to act. And then para lang ma-reach mo ulit yung state of homeostasis. Now, why is this related sa teaching tsaka sa behavior ng mga students? So for example, may mga estudyante kang ganito nagle-lesson kayo, ganun lang siya sa'yo. Tapos, magtataka ka bakit kaya siya ganun. Okay ka naman, masaya ka naman, ganyan. Ang dami mo namang immediacy behaviors, friendly ka naman, ay activities ka naman, bakit ganun siya? So, maybe because primarily, ang primary drives niya hindi pala na-satisfy, baka hindi siya nakatulog or hindi siya nakakain. And so, being able to understand that, it will help you sort of gain this access to be able to like advise the student na, oy, pwede kayong kumain ha kung hindi pa kayo nakakakain, ganyan. Or if you want, you can take a 5-minute nap first para lang makapag-focus kayo ulit, like a power nap or something. Because I do that in my class. That's just a suggestion. Pero yun, so as you can see, if you understand this, you can understand also what is causing them to do these misbehaviors, diba? So let's discuss yun yung sa primary. Let's discuss yun sa secondary. So how does it affect? So of course, when we act on our needs, we are conditioned and we acquire the habits and subconscious responses to them immediately, right? So for example, need for primary drives will trump secondary ones, so studying for social recognition. So let's say gutom ka or inaantok ka or something, right? Or yan, meron kang menstruation or something and masakit yung puson mo, that will trump the secondary drive, of course, di ba? Na mag-focus at mag-aral, ganyan. So if we know that, then we can, pwede nating mapunan yung need na yon, right? So the second one for secondary, for example, if the child needs to feel good about himself, this is a secondary need, right? A secondary drive na siya. This one for recognition, right? Of course, the child will try to participate to be recognized. And dito na, herein papasok ang either good na way of participating or bad na way of participating. So I think all of us are aware na students want, if they want attention, they're going to try to either get it in a good way or in a bad way by participating or by making pasaway, right? And so pero the need is the same. They need to be recognized or maybe they just want to feel good or something like that, diba? So pag alam natin yung need na yon, right? If let's say na-recognize natin sila, if we recognize them, then they will be satisfied, right? And they will have positive emotions and they're going to stop na hindi na nila ipupursue yung behavior na yon. So whether it be bad or good, they're going to stop if they're satisfied na. So let's say meron kang estudyanteng nagpapasaway diyan, ang ingay-ingay niya talaga, parang KSP ganon. Hindi mo maintindihan bakit ang ingay niya, kanina pa siya sinasabihang mag-quiet siya, ganyan. And then, if you understand this theory, then you'll realize na baka kailangan niya ng attention or baka may gusto siyang sabihin in class or something, bakit kailangan niya magpapansin like this. And so, if you give it to that person, to the student, right, masasatisfy mo yung need na yon. And once you do satisfy that need, then of course, that's going to decrease na. Magre-reduce na yung drive na yon to do that particular behavior. Okay, so ano yung implications na to in our class? So of course, it's imperative that we find out what drives our students, especially the difficult ones, right? Para at least alam natin how to address it, right? Instead of approaching the problem by punishing the students, just have a one-on-one chat with them and discover what drives them, right? As you're talking, parang magko-consult ka with them and see if you can find opportunities in your lessons to integrate para ma-enact mo yung mga needs nila or mapunan mo yung mga needs nila na yon. Okay, so for example, the need for creative physical expression in an English class, gusto niya physical yung expression niya, right? So English class, so medyo mahirap yung physical doon. But you can try to think, because of knowing na ito yung kailangan niya, you can now decide na, I can include this kind of activity, right? Even in an online platform, pwede mo nang pag-videoin sila or like even live, di ba? They can do a dramatization live if you want, right? Pero napupunan mo yung need, di ba? So it also diminishes that kind of bad behavior. Okay, so for the second theory that I'm going to discuss, we're going to discuss self-determination theory, or ito yung intrinsic tsaka extrinsic motivation. I think you're all familiar with this as well. So a little bit of refresh lang. So personal locus of control, or PLOC, right? So pag may high internal locus of control tayo, so yung personal locus of control, ito yung belief natin na we either control what's happening to us or external ang nagko-control ng mga nangyayari. I think in our term, tadhana. Tadhana yung nagde-decide kung ano yung mangyayari sa akin, that's external, right? Or ako yung nagde-decide kung anong mangyayari sa akin, that's internal. Pag mataas yung internal locus of control natin, this actually leads to intrinsic motivation, nanggagaling from the inside. And so we tend to do things because we enjoy them, nanggagaling sa atin. And if we do have external yan, it's not external, locus of control, it leads to extrinsic motivation as well, wherein mas nagfo-focus tayo sa consequences such as rewards or punishments as the main motivator of our behavior. So, bakit importante to? Because this will also explain to us bakit ba nagmi-misbehave ang mga bata in the classroom, right? Baka kasi yung nagmo-motivate sa kanila, or for example, gusto sana nila mag-learn. Gusto talaga intrinsically, gusto nilang mag-learn. Pero wala na silang na-learn, masyado kasing mabilis yung lesson, right? So they will misbehave kasi they don't feel like there's a point in learning anymore, anything, kasi masyadong mabilis, hindi nila napoprocess, wala silang naiintindihan, and so nawawala yung motivation na yun, right? So there are three needs that lead to intrinsic motivation. So the first one is affectance, which is, it just means being successful at what we do. Connectedness, being connected with others, there is that need to be connected, and then the need to be autonomous, right? So itong tatlong need na daw na to, pag napunan daw to, you're going to develop what we call as intrinsic motivation. So according to this theory, right, all of us want to be eventually in control of our life and responsible for our actions. Kasi if we are in that state, then we feel like we can be motivated to reach our goals and dreams and whatever we set our mind into. So even the kids in their goals of studying or whatever, if nade-develop nila yung tatlong ito, and that's why I discuss it here to remind us na kailangan yung mga activities natin nagfo-focus in making them feel these things. Mapunan natin yung mga needs na to: affectance, connectedness, and autonomy. Okay? So how does it affect them? So, according to self-determination theory, of course, fina-focus na yung intrinsic, but hindi niya din diminish yung importance ng extrinsic. In fact, according to their research, it shows that extrinsic motivation, basta hindi lang natin ino-overuse and sinasabay natin with the needs na kailangan punan, right, it can actually lead eventually to intrinsic motivation. So eventually, so for example, mag-incentivize ka na pag recite sila, ganyan. Ako, ganyan kasi yung ginagawa ko. I do have what I call as the happy stub system. For me, I told my students na I am doing this. I'm not treating you like kids kasi meron akong sa happy stub. So this is what I call as the happy stub. So in the face-to-face situation, I do give this to college students. Can you believe? And can you believe that it's highly effective to get them to speak up and to talk about their opinions and everything? College students to ah. So why is it na pumapatol sila sa ganon? Kasi I explained to them that the very reason why I want them to recite is actually eventually to actually hone their speaking skills. I want them to be able to express their mind without fear of being judged, and even if there is a judgment, so what ngayon? Parang ganun yun yung gusto kong ma-develop sa kanila, which is eventually intrinsic. But it started out as extrinsic, diba? You see where I'm going here? So what are the implications of this theory? So the first one is to make our lessons as enjoyable as possible. Okay, why? Kasi the more that they enjoy, the more they engage, and the more they engage, the more they're going to reach effectance, right? To be successful in what they do, right? So that's the first one. Second one, plan every single one of our lessons, keeping in mind ano kaya yung pwede nating gawin wherein the student will feel, they can literally feel their progress. So you remember my happy stubs? At the end of the class kasi, all the students who recited will come forward and give me the happy stubs again, and so nabibilang parang feel nilang may na-achieve silang something every single time we have a class. And so that feeds their need to be autonomous, to be yeah, effective as a student, right? And foster connectedness. So I do also have what we call as mga group work, because I want them to also know how to work with other people. And I think it's very important because it prepares our students from the primary to the tertiary level for real life, right? Because you're not alone. Where no man is an island. Even if we succeed in school, if we don't know how to connect with others in real life after graduation, wala din. Diba? So it's very important. And then show them the benefits of true learning. So eventually also explain to them ano yung mga benefits ba kung you want to learn for the sake of learning. Just like what we do here in Vibal, diba? As teachers, wala nang pumipilit sa ating mag-take ng webinar na ito, but we have the desire to learn and be better, diba? And this is true learning, right? So, a good teacher can inspire hope, ignite the imagination, and instill a love of learning. I really like this quote. It's one of my favorite ones. Okay. Another one, teaching is a work of the heart, or a work of heart. Hindi lang work of art, but work of heart. Kasi ang dami natin kailangan gawing effort. So a teacher affects eternity, and one can never tell where their influence stops. So why am I saying all these good things about us? To remind us na yes, nakakapagod magturo, but this is a very noble profession, a profession that creates other professions. We all know that. And so if we dedicate our life talaga 100% to this, then yun, we're going to produce quality individuals. Okay, so bibilisan ko na lang to. So what are the tips to grab their attention? Reinforce right behavior. For all three demographic, it works. So ibig sabihin, if may ginagawa silang tama, please appreciate them. Don't overdo it, but please do it. Okay? Change it up every now and then how you start your class. So wag lang yung good morning, right? Usually, I do start some classes na parang tumatawa ako or something. So just change it up. Kanya-kanya naman tayong personalities. I think the unpredictability makes the students excited to see what you're going to do next in the next class, right? Next one, give bright, interesting visual input. This is more for primary and secondary students, not so much with tertiary. Hindi na nila kailangan ng ganon at the start of the class. What else? Establish a class chant or action. So I actually did this. That's why chinek ko din yung sa tertiary. I did this with my students also to get their attention. So sometimes even college students also lose their attention. So kahit na hindi sila mga kids, ganyan, they lose their attention also during the middle of the class. And so I did this parang chant thing wherein I will say high five. Okay, I actually got this from one of my pedagogical trainings. Sabi ng trainer namin, high five, and then all the students will have to raise their right hand. So I adapted this one. I copied that from him. And then I did that to all of my classes and it was highly effective. So kahit ano yung ginagawa nila, pag nag-high five na ako, lahat sila tatahimik, lahat sila nagre-raise ng hand, and I got their attention again. So you can also use that. Yung hi tsaka hello natin, that's also one way. So use silence to your advantage. Now, I'm a very noisy person. I'm a noisy teacher. Masyado akong madaldal. So pag ako naging quiet, sobrang natatakot yung mga students ko. So if they're too noisy, if I want to grab their attention with low effort, that's what I do. I just be quiet and then they notice na instantly kasi nga hindi ako matahimik na tao. I'm very noisy. So when I do become quiet, yun, alam na nilang galit na ako. Okay? Pose a unique or challenging question again to get their attention. So pag unique yung question, mapapaisip sila and that grabs their attention. Okay? So what else? Tips to make it interesting. Use props. Okay, now I checked it for all three because I personally still use it even for the collegiate level. So live examples such as, for example, my pag nag-online class ako, sorry, I do have my makeup here. So just as a sample, for example, may ikakwento akong something na story sa mga estudyante ko. So si person A, si person B, just use, daily stuff in your house na reachable sa'yo. For me, I think that makes it more animated and more fun and unpredictable for your students. So that makes it interesting. Be very expressive, as you can see also here in Vibal, right? I do have a very expressive facial expression. And then you can also see na yung voice ko hindi siya monotone. Please don't do monotone. Try to practice the modulation para mas interesting siya pakinggan, di ba? With all of the ups and downs, right? So take one concept at a time. Again, don't overload them. I personally believe that it's better, even if in one class, ganito lang, hindi ko ma-fully finish ang everything. But at the end of the day, mas naaalala ng mga estudyante ko yung majority of the lesson kasi they really took their time to process it. So that's just me. I'm not going to impose it to everyone, but yun, just take it one step at a time. Engage them to be part of the discussion. So dapat two-way. I actually say na ang lecture is just one way. Ako lang, makikinig ka lang, that's lecture. But discussion has to be two-way. And so I really listen to my students. I want to hear their opinions about it. They can also use examples, their own experience to include and enrich our discussion. So get them active. So kung inaantok na sila, patayuin nyo sila, pa-jump mo sila, or pa-breathing exercise, kahit ano, just get them active. Incentivize participation. So I already discussed happy stubs, ask their opinion on how to make the class more interesting. So I think masyadong pressure kung tayo lahat mag-iisip. Actually, magugulat kayo if you ask them what they want to do to make it interesting. They'll surprise you. So it's a good thing. Try to ask them. Let them facilitate games or activities related to the topic. You'll not only see how responsible they are, but how creative they can be also. Okay? Okay. Lastly, additional pro tips na lang from teaching online. So use a plain background as much as possible para hindi sila ma-distract for secondary and tertiary. Kasi for primary, they do need something to grab their attention. So they need some colorful background or animated background for primary students. Ito, a suggestion natin ito requirement, download and install Crisp software. It's for free. What is good about this is that it actually cancels out the noise, especially if you're living with a lot of people. During online class, it's very important to have a very clear voice. As you can see, mas maganda yung experience of listening to me kasi walang masyadong maingay, right? So that's because of Crisp. And then generously smile brightly. Smiling brightens up everyone's day, even yours, right? So smile brightly, eat properly, and also dress up accordingly. Set an example to your students para yung sabi kong structure na parang nawawala na sa kanila. If you begin that, na ikaw naliligo ka, nag-makeup ka, nagbibihis ka, if you show them, tapos kumakain ka din, meron kang routine, if you show them that, they're going to be encouraged to do the same thing, right? Joke around every now and then. Again, wag masyadong stiff. You want things to be interesting para hindi mawala yung attention nila. Admit your mistakes and be real with them. There's nothing more important than this, to show our students that we are just human, and to be human is to err. So it's okay to accept our mistakes and be corrected by them sometimes. What else? Eye contact with the main camera. So we have cameras in our online platform. harapin nyo ang mga estudyante nyo, wag dito, wag doon, dyan, para they feel really connected to you. Encourage an open class ambience by helping them feel na okay lang mag-open up sa'yo. Alright? Yun. So this is another video, but you can just watch it on your own time after this webinar. Yan po yung title niya, right? And then, so a little bit, last na po na part to. So what kind of online classroom ambience do I give off to my students or pupils? These are things that you should think about after this webinar, no? Is my approach to my students the kind that I would personally enjoy if I were to listen to me? Okay, this is a very important question that you have to ask yourself. Kasi kung yung sagot is no, I'm not going to be interested to listen to my own lecture, then you have to change it up. Okay, so what can I acknowledge, admit, and adjust in my approach to help facilitate a better environment for learning and help my students enjoy my classes more? So if nanonotice nyo lahat ng points to ponder, bakit on your end? Kasi again, students mirror how we perform. And so if they, I'm not saying all of them kasi maraming factors nga, pero ayun, according to research, what you put out, yun din ang babalik sa'yo. And in my own experience as a teacher, right, with all the teaching online man or face-to-face, it has always been the case. If I put out good energy, good vibes to my students, ganun din yung na-receive ko. Kaya it's very rare for me to actually have those very bad experiences with students. So I highly encourage you to do the same thing. All right. So students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So connect first. Connect with them first before you can actually teach them. And believe me, it's not only just your lesson, but they're going to listen to you about everything after they see that you genuinely care for them. So I think that's the most important thing that you have to remember. Okay, so is everything clear, or do you have any more questions maybe that you want to ask me about our topic before I end?
Thank you very much, Miss Therese. Now we will proceed to the question and answer portion. Our
Mm-hmm,
first question is from Maria V.
mm-hmm.
What
Mm-hmm.
if the stressor comes from their house? What are some tips you can give us that their parents or guardians would not be offended?
Okay. So, I think it's important na kasi minsan if family problems, it's actually up to you if you want na kung feeling mo kaya mo namang kausapin yung bata. Kasi for children or for students, majority of the time they just need to be heard. Kasi in my experience, even if I'm their teacher, if they need na parang maipalabasan lang sila ng sama ng loob nila kasi ayaw nila, I mean, if they are willing to go to the guidance counselor, by all means, please do so. Pero kung hindi sila willing, and ikaw willing ka naman to hear them out, just hear them out, and that actually helps them to have this relief from that stress, and that helps them in improving their performance in your class. Ang behavior nila, it's going to change. I'm speaking from experience here. So maybe you can do that, or if malala na yung situation at hindi mo na kayang i-handle, you can refer to a professional, either the guidance counselor in your school or university, or suggest ano ka na talaga, mag-parent tawag mo doon, mag-parent consultation ka na talaga, and tell them na it's bothering the student, your student, na hindi mo naman sasabihin sa kanila na may kasalanan sila or something. Sabihin mo lang na there's something bothering the student na malala na, and then that the student needs to be referred to someone na professional who can help him or her. Ganon.
Thank you for that, Mr. Reese.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Belen Ochea Sabaytay. Can you
Mm-hmm.
suggest a program that is doable for online teachers handling some attitude problem learners, if there is, to positively motivate them in these online classes?
Okay. So again, pagka may attitude problem, kasi there are again different factors or reasons behind bakit ganun yung nagiging behavior nila. So maybe the first step in this sustainable program is do some digging on your students. As their teacher, maybe advisor, ikaw yung may karapatan to ask them, kamustahin mo lang sila. I think ako, hindi naman ako advisor ng mga students ko, but what I do is after class, if may mga students, yun nga, I think foster this kind of ambience na open kang makinig sa kanila and you're not going to judge them and hindi maa-affect yung grades nila if mag-open up sila sa'yo. So I think that takes kind of a little bit of practice, maybe being friendly with your student, friendly enough that they feel like it's safe to open up to you. And then after you've dug that, a little digging on what is their problem, maybe after that you can move on to next step na, maybe referring them to professionals. Pero majority of the time kasi pag nakinig na yung teacher sa estudyante and the student feels heard, at least in my experience, parang it gets better. At least in my class. Yun yung I've handled a class before. Maraming may attitude problem doon, but during my class, well behaved sila because you make them feel that they're accepted for who they are. Kahit maingay sila at first, ganyan, hindi mo sila i-judge. You just view them and respect them as people. You make them feel like may unconditional positive regard ka sa kanila. And they just open up naturally. I don't ask them to open up to me. They just do pag may time sila or something. And that helps. Okay?
Thank you, Miss Therese.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Rosemary Amparado.
Mm-hmm,
How
mm-hmm.
can teachers lessen the impact of learning isolation that students may feel while away from school?
Okay. Ako personally, what I do is I give them tasks na pang group tasks. So, kasi when I was teaching in UST, what I do is there is always parang groupings in all of my classes. May groupings sila lahat. And so, even if you started out with na parang purely ano lang talaga online platform, pwede ka namang mag-assign 'di ba? Meron naman tayong class list. So you can assign ganitong mga people, magkakagrupo sila, and then ask them to make something collaborative. Of course, possible lang dapat na even from their own home. So for example, maybe they can make a music video, for example lang. Music video wherein kumakanta sila individually and then may nag-edit lang, ganon. This makes them feel like it's a real parang may collaboration pa rin, hindi sila alone, there's the sense of connectedness. So, hindi sila masyadong makakaramdam ng isolating feeling. You can also do tasks such as, yan, magpapa-research ka sa kanila or magpapagawa ka ng report as a group, not as a individual. Magsasabay silang magre-report in your online class. That's something collaborative. So, for as long as you do collaborative activities, I think that really helps facilitate the feeling na hindi ka alone. So I think it helps the students. Ayun.
And for our last question from Sherry Ann Rivera.
Mm-hmm.
What is or are your ideas in dealing about students taking screenshots of you or the class during online classes?
Okay. So maybe first thing I have to know is kasi usually hindi ako masyadong observant kasi masyado akong tawag doon absorbed sa pagturo and pag-uusap sa kanila, hindi ko na notice yung mga screenshot na yan. But if ever word comes to me na parang may nagsi-screenshot and everything, first of all, kailangan ko alamin kung sino yung nag-screenshot. And then I would message that person privately after the class and just ask the person, what's the purpose of the screenshot? Kasi if the purpose lang naman is baka kasi merong PowerPoint doon at tinatamad siyang magkopya or something kasi masyadong mabilis yung pacing, baka yun lang naman yung dahilan bakit siya nagsi-screenshot, then that's okay. That's okay for me. Wala namang problema yun for me. If the purpose of the screenshot is to demean me or something, usually I just do processing. So what's the reason that compels you to do that? What's the benefit? What's the benefit para sa part mo na i-demean mo ako? What's gonna happen? So kung sasabihin niya, I feel popular, ganyan, ganyan. Okay? So what makes you want to feel popular? What's that need? So you deconstruct, you process. Ano ba talaga yung totoong need niya? Kasi ano lang yan eh. Parang surface level problems. You have to know how to to, hindi naman attack, pero like sort of approach it in a way na ma-realize na ay, hindi naman pala necessary mag-screenshot kung hindi naman talaga kailangan, right? So for me, it's not a problem. I think you just have to, yun nga lang, magte-take ka lang ng extra efforts to reach out sa student na yun. Okay?
Okay, one more question, Miss,
Okay.
from MCSD na Tesorio.
Okay.
What approach can we use if the pupil won't stop misbehaving? Do I need to punish him? In what way?
Okay, I think that depends kasi kung anong misbehavior. So, like ano, nag-iingay ba siya? Dinidisrupt niya yung class? I think it's important. I call out my students. So, if it's a pupil, I do call out also the mistake or the mistake of the student. So, i-mention mo, okay? So, for example, ako, mga estudyante ko, may mga nag-iingay. Okay, so sabihin ko, okay, do you want to share something sa class? Okay, I can be quiet. So I don't shame them. I sort of just like parang ano, reverse psychology sort of. Kasi sasabihin ko na lang na, okay, do you want to share something in the class? Kasi for example, maingay sila, masyadong unruly. Sabihin ko, do you want to share something sa class? I can be quiet and will listen to you. And then, yun, sila na din kukusang tatahimik. So, yeah, I'm not saying na we should not call them out. I think discipline is very important part ng pagiging teacher. But I do think that there are other ways. There are a lot of resources actually sa internet to teach us how to do that. Like how do we do it in a way na hindi naman kailangang mang-demean, hindi naman kailangang i-humiliate yung student, hindi naman kailangang sirain mo talaga yung self-esteem ng bata. I don't think that's the best approach. I believe that if you can go the high road, do it that way compared sa ano. It will take a lot more effort kasi mag-research ka pa, but for me it's better at the end of the day psychologically for the kids, for the students. Ayun.
That's all the
Okay.
questions we have for now. Any last reminders to our viewers for today, ma'am?
Um, wala, ayun. Siguro, yun nga, for me, connection is the most important thing. So, connect to your students, especially during this time na it's very anxiety provoking itong situation natin, very isolating, all of us are stressed. Maybe you will be surprised just how much your classes, if you do it in that way of connecting to your students in a genuine manner rather manner, actually helps students. When I left UST, I received a lot of messages from my students, telling me na they really appreciated the class that I had one semester with them. And so parang it was very good to know na yun yung effects sa kanila. And I wish that for all of us here in the Philippines, lahat tayo na mga teachers would experience the same thing. So ayun. So thank you so much for listening, for listening and attending this webinar with me today. Thank you.
There we have it. On behalf of Vibal Group Incorporated, I would like to thank our speaker for today for this very insightful learning session. It is an honor to have you with us today, ma'am. And to all our Kavibal viewers, all thanks to you for your continuous patronage to our daily learning session. Muli, maraming salamat at magandang araw sa ating lahat.
Bye.